Well, now we are going to move to our next presentation. So, Katie, can you say hello?
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Neal. I am Vice President of Communications and Marketing at Timely Care, as well as Principal at Katie Neal Coaching and Consulting. It's so great to be with you today.
Well, we are excited to have you. So, you can just pull up your slides and take it away.
All right, let's do this. Okay, everyone. As I mentioned, I'm Katie, and I am excited to be here with you today on what I hope is going to be a fun and timely topic. Just first want to say thank you to Mindy. I am also a strategic communications professional, and so every little nugget that she just shared and her presentation was chock full of them. They just spoke to my comms leader heart. So wonderful, wonderful way to kick off this day. I hope that my session is also chock full of a few nuggets for you. I'd love to share with you 13 leadership lessons for women, Taylor's version. So if you haven't guessed, these are inspired by pop superstar Taylor Swift. Before we get started on that, I thought I would tell you a little bit about myself. I actually live in Lexington. I hope that's not too polarizing for most of y'all in Louisville. I grew up in Paris, about 30 minutes outside, and I began my career in communications about 20 years ago in North Carolina. I was a TV news journalist, a reporter in Clarksville, Tennessee, and then Evansville, Indiana, before moving out to Sacramento to begin my career in PR agencies. That aspect of my career took me from Sacramento to San Francisco to Singapore, and then back to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where I went on to lead the communications team at Wake Forest University, which is my alma mater. Y'all are among the first to know that I am right on the cusp of completing a leadership credential in executive coaching. So when our family moved back to Kentucky 5 years ago, I had started my own communications consultancy, really specializing in higher education, but doing a lot of communications work across industries. And then one of those clients, Timely Care, which does virtual mental health and medical care for college and university students, just became a bigger and bigger piece of my portfolio. And if you've ever done any consulting at all, you know it can be really tempting to go in-house with one of your clients sometimes. And that's what I did. And I'm really, really excited to, in the next few months, be launching Katie Neal Consulting and Coaching. So if any of y'all are interested in learning more about communications, I know Mindy would be a wonderful resource for you. I'd be happy to chat with you about that as well, or executive coaching. I'm going to be focusing on communications professionals. So let's get started though with Taylor, which is why you're all here. Okay, so today's set list, we are going to go through 13 leadership lessons that I've observed. There are no doubt countless more. I would actually love to hear yours in the Q&A session. And I've also paired each one of those with a song that sort of embodies. So hopefully as a takeaway from today's presentation, you'll walk away with a little playlist of your own that I hope will inspire you in your leadership as well. So let's get started. Number one, be authentic. Listen, no one tells it like Taylor Swift, right? Her lyrics are authentic. Her connection with her fans is genuine. She is living life on her own terms. And all of these qualities have built trust and loyalty among her fans to the point that they are practically an army of hers and they feel like they're friends with her. You know, as women, one of our superpowers is being able to walk into a room and really say the hard things with professionalism and with confidence. I'm not saying that's easy. It rarely is, but bringing a trusted point of view into a room and into the trenches is both a privilege and a responsibility. And it's something that we really have to own authentically and in our own voice. And for this, the first song of our playlist is Speak Now. I really wish we could have musical clips in here, but I know Ginger said that can slow it down. So anyway, hopefully we can create our own playlist later. The second lesson that I've learned from Taylor is adapt to move forward. Remember when Taylor Swift was a teen country music star? Well, you know, in the face of an ever-evolving music industry, she has had to change the way that she views the world, that she does her business, that she writes her songs time and time again. And I don't know about your industry, but as a PR professional, I have had to evolve repeatedly over the years. You know, when I got my first PR agency job over 20 years ago, I was faxing press releases on the daily. And I can't even tell you the last time I used a fax machine. And now I'm using AI every day. So, you know, overcoming challenges and adapting to new circumstances is just part of how we have to evolve and to remain relevant in our careers, both as women and as leaders in the workplace. And so the song for adapting to move forward is change. Lesson 3. Mindy definitely set the stage for this one. Prepare, prepare, prepare. I'm actually sort of an accidental Swiftie. I do not have daughters. I just sort of happen to really like her music. And as a communicator, I have really loved watching her evolve her brand, take control of her narrative, really reframe any sort of story that's out there about her that she didn't put out there herself. And so I actually attended one of her concerts back in 2011. Back then, before we had our son, my husband was dabbling in, ticket sales and things like that back when we had infinitely more time before we were parents. And, so he scooped up 6 Taylor Swift tickets way before they would have built the same kind of profit that they would now in the Eras Tour. But he said, "Oh, I've got these tickets and I'm going to resell them." And I said, "Well, I would really like to go to that concert." So I scooped up 5 friends and we went. And more than the music, what really struck me about the performance was just how choreographed it was to the T. I couldn't believe it. Even then, every move seemed like second nature. And so fast forward to last year, she's on Time's Person of the Year cover. And in the story about her, she said something along the lines of, "In the Eras Tour, I wanted to be so over-rehearsed that I could be silly and engage with the fans without losing my train of thought." And as a comms leader, I thought, gosh, if every spokesperson showed up to every interview that way, this would be amazing. But then, it's not really just spokespeople, it's all of us. We owe it to our teams. We owe it to our organizations. We owe it to our employees and our colleagues and our clients to show up prepared. Doing so is really a winning philosophy that transcends industries. And so the song for this is Mastermind. Now, for Swifties of a certain age, the idea and the image of Kanye Swift interrupting her at the VMAs in 2009 is one that you'll never forget. And there's no doubt that she came back stronger than a 90s trend. But even in the aftermath that unfolded with the Kanye situation and the video released by Kim Kardashian, and if you're familiar with the snake emojis and all the things, how you respond to a reputational issue and adversity speaks volumes about your own leadership. The word crisis comes from a Greek word, and it's not actually about like when the situation occurs. It's about how you respond. And so for Taylor Swift, there's no better one here than to shake it off. Now, along those same lines, mustering grit and courage, Taylor Swift does not back down from a principled fight, and she is the master of leading by example. So this image here portrays her and Scooter Braun. I don't know if you're familiar with the Max docuseries that's out there right now. I think it's called Taylor Swift versus Scooter Braun, Bad Blood. But it's all about this fight that she had with Scooter, a well-known music manager who's managed Ariana Grande, Justin Bieber, etc., when he took ownership of and acquired the rights to her masters of her first 6 albums. And I highly recommend it if you're into that sort of thing. And so whether or not there's a legal dispute about whether he was legally able to do that, apparently he was. But what I thought really took courage on her part and where she really had to muster grit was in reframing that entire narrative. And she took it out of the courts and out of the boardroom, a really complicated business situation, and made it into this sort of moral imperative. I'm an artist. I wrote the songs. I perform the songs. Why can't I own my own songs? And made it this whole artist's platform. And similarly, she sued a DJ who reportedly groped her at a photo op one time, and he sued her for like $3 million in defamation charges, and she just countersued him for a symbolic single dollar, $1, and won, setting an example for like, my body is mine and you cannot touch it. And I just think that it's hard for all of us to stand up for what's right sometimes, when sometimes it's just easier to back away or to settle. And it's true that big rewards don't always follow big risks, but doing the right thing never goes out of style. And this issue felt so big for me, especially right now, that I gave this 2 songs, an A side and a B side, if you will. Look What You Made Me Do, if you're feeling a little sassy, and I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, if you're feeling also a little sassy, but ready to get back out there. Okay, lesson number 6, be self-aware. We're all humans. Taylor Swift is someone who isn't afraid to acknowledge her insecurities. In fact, she's made a lot of money off of her insecurities and her mistakes. And none of us is perfect, and a little self-reflection can go a long way. I know for myself, I recently was thinking about, here I am, I'm at a relatively senior position, and I'm mid-career. What am I going to do for the next 20 years of my life that is going to fulfill my own purpose and what I was put here to do? And yes, I can continue on in chief communication officer roles, and that's wonderful. But I think that there might be more purpose for me. And that's sort of what led me down this executive coaching consultancy path, just to be able to help others find their own potential and unlock that. So listen, we all have our ways of dealing with things, whether they're colleagues or peer groups or therapists or coaches. We are all better leaders when we are in tune with our own, you guessed it, anti-hero. Okay, so now to the fun stuff. Prioritizing relationships. So I was loving the Super Bowl hype and all of the different memes about how long would it take Taylor to get from Tokyo to Las Vegas in time for the Super Bowl? Could she do it after her concert and be back for the next one? Listen, whether it's going out with her girl tribe or flying around the world to be there for the Super Bowl for her boyfriend, just some of the very public ways that Taylor has recently shown up for the people that she cares about. And in our high pressure, fast-paced jobs, in today's world where this never leaves us alone, there is always more work to do. And while some of those conflicts are unavoidable, we really shouldn't miss out on the most important moments in our lives and in those that we care about. And so I'm going to draw it back to the archives, to You Belong With Me, and really just sort of set the priority that the people in our lives are most important. Lesson 8, nurturing a strong network. Excuse me. I love this photo because it's fun, but it also shows some of those great connections that she's built. You see longtime collaborator Jack Antonoff. You see best friend Blake Lively and her husband Ryan Reynolds. She's known for her strong relationships with other artists, others in the industry, and building a supportive network and promoting the success of other people. Not to mention her friend posse is super enviable. But I don't know a single leader who would say that they've gotten to where they are all on their own. I just don't know any. And so when I first started my communications consultancy 5 years ago, I was thinking back to all of the clients that I have had, with the exception of one, were either people that I had previously worked with or were already in my network or were referred to by a friend of a friend. So the point is, professional collaborations and friendships outside of work that transcend the office environment contribute to our long-term success. And the song Long Live really embodied that concept. So back to being an accidental Swiftie. I will admit, I was not aware until recently that there's a line in a song that inspired the entire friendship bracelet movement. It says, "So make the friendship bracelets, take the moment and taste it." Most of us will never aspire to or be able to reach the influencer status Taylor Swift has. That is true. But it is worth asking ourselves, are we empowering and inspiring the people around us to do and be the very best that they can be? Are we encouraging experimentation without fear of failure? Is our team showing signs of burnout? Do they have the resources that they need to succeed? These are the questions we must constantly ask ourselves as we seek to lead and inspire. And a great song for this is You're on Your Own, Kid. That's the one with the line about those friendship bracelets. Okay, this is one of my favorite, and I would argue one of the most important: to support diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, full stop. Though Taylor Swift's accomplishments certainly stand on her own, she has faced sexism, misogyny, and all sorts of challenges as she's managed through her career. And I would be surprised if there were any women on this call today that have not either been mansplained or passed over for some sort of an opportunity along the way, whether it's serving on a committee, a promotion, just being able to have your voice heard in a meeting. Unfortunately, biases exist in the workplace and in the world, and gender is just one of them. That doesn't mean that we have to perpetuate them. In fact, it is our responsibility to stop them in their tracks. And so being an effective leader requires really listening to other perspectives. It requires valuing difference. It requires prioritizing diversity, making sure equity is a floor expectation, making sure inclusion is a theme within your workplace, and fostering a sense of belonging. It has never been more important historically to uplift the voices that are not typically heard and raise these things to the forefront. So with this in mind, I give you the song The Man. And if you're not familiar with this, if you're actually not a Swiftie, please, if you take one thing away from this women leadership session, go watch the Man video by Taylor Swift and wait for the end. Okay, shifting gears. Number 11, show compassion. Many of you may have heard last summer that there was a fan who died in Rio at her concert from heat exhaustion. And after the concert, Swift met with her family and spoke of her shattered heart and issued the statement that you can see here on her social media. Also, after the Kansas City Chiefs victory parade, after the shooting that killed a woman, she donated $100,000 to their family. Tragedies occur and crises happen, but it speaks volumes about us as leaders when we respond quickly and compassionately. This is true even when you're not on a global stage or in a position with a spotlight on you. Any of us from where we sit can show compassion for those around us and those who may be hurting. And for this, I offer the song Bigger Than the Whole Sky. That's the one that she sang in Rio and dedicated to the young woman who died. Okay, last two, give generously. I mean, she gave $100,000 checks to the truckers on her show who made it possible for her to travel across the US on the Eras Tour. She's donated food to food banks in the cities where she's toured around the world. Taylor Swift has set an example of how to do well by doing good. And there's no question, I'm assuming none of us also on here are on the Forbes billionaire list, but from whatever resources you have, whether you choose to make a monetary gift or volunteer time or provide pro bono services in your area of expertise, we all have the power from where we sit to make a positive impact, and we should do so. And for that, I offer the song Karma, sort of a tongue-in-cheek way of a tongue-in-cheek song but that gets at that notion of we get out of the world what we pour into it. And finally, do not take yourself too seriously. I cannot say this enough. I think that sometimes as women, we are expected to be so poised and so put together, and we don't have any humor. And I could really relate to what Mindy was saying about maybe not smiling for a little bit. When Taylor Swift swallowed a bug on stage last year, this memorable concert moment went viral, not just because it was so relatable, but because of how she handled it. She just laughed. And, when we expect perfection out of ourselves, we're certain to be let down. It's not going to happen. So sometimes we just need to recognize that everything's not going to go as planned. And whenever we respond to unexpected situations with humor and with grace, it always goes a little bit better. And so for the final song in this playlist, I offer, you need to calm down. I mean, tell that voice in your head, the one who wants you to be perfect, that she's being too loud. Okay. So in conclusion, here is a list of our playlist of Taylor Swift songs. I hope that you enjoy them. I will acknowledge there are not very many. In fact, only one from the Tortured Poets Department recently released. Felt a little dark and maybe a little diss-tracky for leadership lessons, but I think that these are great inspiration for any female leaders looking to do great in the world. And I will pause here for questions. Happy to take them. Please feel free to look me up on LinkedIn and send me an email. I would love to connect with you. And thank you for the opportunity to share with you my observation.
All right, well, thank you so much. Well, I think we have time for a few questions before we move along to our panel discussion for the afternoon. I'll start with this one from Carolina, and she says, how can we talk to a coworker that is not self-aware and selfish and a time suck? Very nice person, but she does not know she's difficult.
Wow, that's a great question, Carolina. There are lots of different ways to take that. The first thing that comes to mind is she may need a little bit of coaching to see what's going on with her, but perhaps just asking, taking a little time out, going to lunch with her on a personal setting, setting aside some deliberate time to have a conversation with her, and then also just sort of unpacking what's behind there. If it's becoming an actual work issue where it's distracting or it's preventing you from getting your job done, it might be something to raise to your manager or your HR business partner. But I always like to try to address things with the benefit of a doubt, maybe try to understand what her perspective is, where's she coming from, what's behind that. That may offer some new avenues. I welcome other people to chime in on that as well if you have other ideas.
Well, thank you. Yes. All right. Well, this will be our final question. And then I'll ask you to surface some final thoughts or words of wisdom. And let's see. Carolina says, some of the toxic people in my world live rent free in my head. How can I get them out of my head?
Oh, wow. Yeah, they do have the ability to do that. I would say set up your own boundaries. What is important to you? How is that serving you? Ask yourself that. And then what would it look like if you had your ideal space? Are they on the inside or on the outside? If the answer is they're still on the inside, then figure out how to make that relationship work. If you see them ideally being on the outside, I would suggest then to figure out a way to move them out of that space rent free. That may take a little self-introspection. It may take a little coaching, maybe working with some of your own personal board of advisors or board of directors to get some different perspectives about what that might look like. But yeah, don't let anybody live rent free in your head. Your space is way too valuable for that.
Wonderful advice. Thank you. And before we wrap and move to our panel, any final words of wisdom for our viewers today?
Well, this is just a great forum. I hope that the biggest thing for me from Taylor Swift is not so much being a fangirl or anything like that, but just this ability to walk in and shape your own narrative and own your brand and be out there. I think it dovetails very nicely with the foundation that Mindy laid for us at the beginning of the day. But just go in there and own it and be who you are and be authentic and be yourself. And you're not going to be perfect, and that's okay. But walk your way.
Well, thank you so much for your time and your wonderful presentation today.
Thank you. Thanks so much.